IronOverLoad.io hardcore podcast coming your way, episode 27. Steve and the Mobster joining me. We're going to be talking about cardio benefits and strategies, which include getting lean. So this is a really good one. We don't see too much information out there about cardio strategies. A lot of misinformation out there on cardio.
Yeah.
So Mobster's here. Mobster used to do a lot of endurance stuff. I used to do a lot of endurance stuff. We definitely know a lot about this stuff. So that's first off, we got to talk about, if we're going to talk about cardio, Mobster, we got to talk about the heart. And the heart is a fist-sized organ, pumps blood throughout your body. To put your hand on your heart right now, you could feel it beating. So to get a strong heart and to train your heart to be strong is very, very important. Now, most of us, especially in America, and it's somewhat in England over there,
Yes.
and in Britain, it's getting there. But in America, especially in the South, especially in rural areas in America, there is very, very poor heart health. Midwest, South, Deep South, and a lot of that is linked to poor diets, and a lot of that is linked to poor lifestyle choices. So the people out there who have the weakest hearts, the people who are out there getting heart attacks young, these are people who are abusing recreational drugs. These are people who even abuse anabolic steroids to the extreme. These are people who are overweight. These are people who smoke, drink, put a lot of bad shit in their body, shitty diets. They don't do cardio. You've got to do cardio. Now, a lot of people say, oh, but Steve, I do weight training almost every day for an hour. Isn't that cardio? It is a little bit, but it's not the same thing. And if you don't believe me, go run a 10K. Sign up for a 10K this weekend and go there, and you'll get your ass handed to you if you think that just weight training is going to get you into top shape, because it won't. So really, very, very important to train your heart to be strong. So right off the bat, one of the two things you got to learn about the way your heart beats. You have your maximum heart rate, which is going to be your age minus 220. So if you're 50 years old, your maximum heart rate is going to be around 170 beats per minute. If you're 20 years old, your maximum heart rate is going to be about 200 beats per minute. Very, very simple. So when you go sprint and you run as fast as you can, that's as high as your heart rate will go. So it might go like a few points above that, maybe 5 points, maybe 7 points above that. But generally, it's going to be around that mark. So every day you get older, it drops by 1. Your maximum heart rate will drop. So definitely, when you're young, 20 years old, 25 years old, you're going to be much faster than someone who's 50, 55, all things being equal, because you're able to push your heart to its maximum speed quicker. Now, the ability to get more out of your maximum heart rate, where you're able to basically cycle your heart and get it to push you much more than normally would be getting it into shape. So if you take someone, like I was saying, someone in the Deep South, they eat nothing but fried food. They eat IHOP every day and Denny's. They eat shit. They eat McDonald's. They don't exercise. You put them on a track and you have them run around. There's going to be less of an effect. Like basically them walking around the track will get them to their maximum heart rate. That's how out of shape their heart is. But if you're in great shape, you really have to sprint. You have to do high intensity cardio to get your heart close to that maximum heart, because you're in such good shape. It's going to be, you're allowing yourself to push more and push harder to reach that point. You see? So you have the advantage over someone who is in poor heart health shape. Now the second part of that is your resting heart rate. Now, when you're rested and you're sitting, your resting heart rate, the lower the number, the better, because that shows you that your heart is pumping less when you're just sitting. Now, someone who's really out of shape, their heart will pump 100 beats a minute.
Yes.
110 beats a minute. Really, really bad shape. And that's a sign that your heart is not trained properly and you're in really, really bad shape. So that's why just walking to your mailbox will win you. But someone who's in really, really good shape, like Mobster and I, when we were in top shape with endurance, we had maximum heart rate. We had resting heart rates of the 40s.
Yeah.
When I was
less.
I was going and do Bikram yoga, which is a really hard cardio. And I was doing pyro Pilates for a while. And I got my resting heart rate, even in my 40s, my resting heart rate was 47, 48.
Mine was less.
Yep.
That's how crazy that was, Steve. I got it down. I was jogging, I think 5 times a week. I would run a 10K at the weekends. I was doing 2 evenings. I was also doing taekwondo and lifting. So it was quite a combination. And at some point, it actually got to be too much. But my resting heart rate got down to 38 in the morning, Steve. Literally, legs over the side of the bed, guys, sitting there, take a moment, relax, and then I would check my heart rate. And I did that multiple times. It wasn't just a one-off, Steve. This was multiple times. It would be under 40. Now, I weighed a lot less than I do now, but I was running a lot. And to be honest, I actually say even now, not just the running itself, but my level of fitness was so good. I would have a hard training session in the nearby sports center, and I'd come out, chat with the guys, shoot the breeze, and I felt like I could go back inside and do another training session. Now, I didn't because I wasn't an idiot, and I wanted to recover, and I was doing the other crazy stuff as well. Plus, I was working a physical job. The combination of all those factors, and yet I had a resting heart rate of 38. The big thing that Steve hasn't mentioned is the difference between the two. Now, what do I mean by that? It's the ability for that high heart rate. Let's use the example that Steve said earlier on of an older guy with 170 and a low heart rate. A good indication of your level of fitness is the speed, the time at which it comes down from the high heart rate to the low one. That's a great indication of the fitness. So in other words, how quickly you recover. So what we're going to talk about here today, guys, just a few ideas and the importance of cardio as well, is how to make that happen. Now, Steve, you're way, way more into this now than I am at the moment, although I was back in the day. Give the listeners a few tips and techniques that you use now.
Yep. And what Mobster was mentioning, just to understand, Lance Armstrong, 32 beats per minute. Usain Bolt, 33 beats per minute. That's their resting heart rate when they were at their peak. So, marathon runners, 30 to 40. So when I was running, half marathons and 5Ks, my resting heart rate was around 40. So, Mobster and I were definitely, so that big spread between having a maximum heart rate at 200 when you're in your 20s and then having the resting heart rate that low, that shows you how much of a spread that you can basically, how good of your heart is, how good of your heart. So one of the best tips is going to be when it comes to cardio is getting either an Apple Watch or a GPS watch. And you can strap a heart rate monitor with a GPS watch too. The Apple Watch comes with it already. And you can actually track your heart rate as you're doing activities and as you're exercising and stuff. And it becomes kind of a game where you can really track your progress. So let's say right now, the average human, 60 to 100 is going to be your resting heart rate. But you want to get it obviously closer to 60, closer to 50 as possible. So that shows you that you're in really good shape. So let's say you're at 85 right now. You can actually track this and see how you're progressing. So there's really, the bottom line, there's really the simplest way to do this. Number one, obviously right off the bat, is changing your diet. Because if you're eating shitty, it's going to be really hard to do cardio. If you eat a bad meal and then try to go do, high intensity cardio, you're going to throw up. Your body's going to want to evacuate whatever you put into it. So it's really, really good to change your diet right off the bat. So a really good strategy would be fasted cardio, because when you do fasted cardio, there's nothing in your stomach. There's nothing for your body to process. So it's really going to help you get the most out of your cardio that way. But if you insist on having something, fruit, especially tropical fruits, melons, stuff like that are really good because they're full of fiber and water, and that is going to not bother you as much. So what I used to do if I had late in the day training, I would basically eat like one egg and I would eat some fruit with it 2 hours before my cardio. And I might have a little bit of brown rice here and there. And that was a really good meal. And then I would try my best in that 2 hour window before I did my cardio, Mobster, to evacuate, to take a dump, basically. You want to piss and shit out everything out of your body the most you can. This way, when you run, you're nice and light, and that's it. So experiment on different things. If you're allergic to eggs, obviously, it's not a good idea to eat eggs if you're allergic to them. So you have to find out what works for you. But generally, things that are, generally like tropical fruits and stuff like that are really, really easy for your body to process and digest. So you can try that. So I'm also talk about that, and we're going to get into some cardio strategies here.
I'll give you an example, guys. One of the things that I've mentioned on previous podcasts, and has mentioned it on the forums as well, is I don't have an iPhone or an iWatch or whatever else, but most phones you can have an app added to it which counts your daily steps. And my daily step target for my height, my weight, my age, everything else is with a moderate setting on the receptor. So you can have it super sensitive or super low sensitive, one or the other. Mine's in a moderate, it's in a moderate position, and I have a 6,000 step count every single day for heart health. And I've actually done that already, Steve, before I even trained this morning, because I went to the shops and then I went one of my daily walks by the local wetlands and took some photographs this morning. Very bitterly cold, by the way. And I'd already done my daily steps before I got back to the house after those two ventures. And whatever else I'm doing for the day is into a bonus. Now, here's the thing. As big and as old and as strong as I am, I need to do these things because real big guys like me who have poor hearts will die. It's as simple as that. And they will die. We're all going to die, but we'll die sooner. You do not see 400-pound strong men that are 80 or 90 years of age. You very rarely see 300-pound strong men that are 80 or 90 years of age. It's just a fact of life. And that additional body weight puts stress, and like Steve said, with the diet. So that's one. I mean, I talk about this, guys. How many of you know, and in fact, some of you will be guilty of this, so I'm going to sound like Uncle Mobster's kicking your ass, which I kind of am, but how many of you drive to the gym, especially in the US, I get it, it's a car-centric society, and then do cardio? I walk to the gym, Steve. I don't drive, so that's another reason, but I walk to the gym. I walk to the gym. That's half my daily steps, just walking to the local gym. I have my gym here at the house as well, as a few of the listeners already know. But I walk to my local gym. It's over a mile there. And then I walk from there to the shops and then back to my house. I've done at least 3 miles plus. Just walking to the gym, walking to the shops, and then coming home afterwards. It's pretty much close to my daily quota, my 6,000 steps. So guys, driving to the gym to get on the treadmill. Steve, you and I talked about this, and this is it's we know the benefits of cardio. You should know the benefits of cardio, and that's what we're discussing here. But strategy is walk, go trail walking, walk up a mountain, walk up a hill. Don't walk on the flat. Start setting times. We have, I think, something over there called Park Run, which is a 5K, and it's done all over the United Kingdom, Steve. Over 1 million people at the same time on every Saturday morning. The fella that put this together got a medal from the Queen when she was alive, an MBE, I believe, for putting this together. They register your times, and people compete to get their names on the list. And it's 1.2 million people every Saturday morning running a 5K. And then there's parks and running areas all over the United Kingdom. You have it in America, you have it in New York, you have it in the big cities. You can have it in your local areas too. Join that. Just do that, Steve. Go for a walk during the week and do the 5K at the weekend. Now, one more thing before I'll let Steve carry on, and that is quite simply, and this is another trick, great trick for those of you that struggle with diet, but also for those of you that wanted to put on weight. The more cardio you do, and doesn't have to be high intensity running as fast as possible, but it can be low intensity. It could be the trail walking that I've mentioned. It could just be getting your daily steps in. It keeps your metabolism ticking over. What do I mean by that? If you sit on your ass in front of the sofa and the boob tube with a remote control and a bag of chips, your metabolism will slow down. Those of you that are running, those of you that are walking, those of you that are getting in daily steps will have a faster metabolism. So if you eat the same amount of food, the one with the faster metabolism will be leaner. It also means that when you're not eating, when you do diet, the speed that you'll lose weight, the quickness that you'll get into shape and or use fat as a metabolic tool for you to have energy is that much more efficient. And in fact, it's arguable, Steve, I believe, both with the fasting that you talk about a lot, but also with a higher level of cardio, your digestion tends to be better as well. How's about some more tips and techniques, Steve?
So very, very important before we get into training strategies, shoes. Shoes are crucial. Don't make the mistake of buying cheap shoes.
Yes.
You got to go good quality shoes. Now, there's certain brands that certain people are going to like better. I personally like Nike. I like to go Nike outlet store and I get shoes that are discounted 40, 50% because the model is a year old or whatever. So everyone wants the new one when it first come out. I like to get them when they're, a year out, and then you could save 40, 50% that way. And those really work good for me. You need a good quality running shoe. All right.
Yeah.
So you can go there. They'll help you fit. It needs to fit properly. You need to try them out. You need to walk around the store in them. You need to do a little jogging around in the store. Make sure that they fit properly, because if they don't, you're going to run into injuries from poor shoes. I personally like to find grass. I'll go find a soccer field or a football field near me or a park that has grass and run barefoot. That is what most optimal way to run. But if you don't have that, find a soft surface and run in your shoes. Do not run on sidewalks and do not run if you can on streets. Streets are extremely dangerous. You get hit by a car, happens all the time, but also it's not good for your legs. It's not good for your feet. It's not good for your knees. It's not good for your hips. It's not good for your back, anything, to run on a hard surface. Run on a soft surface. Treadmills, not a good idea. Treadmills, you heel strike on treadmills. You cause a lot of nagging injuries from treadmills. I don't recommend running on a treadmill. So best thing is to run either on a track. If you live in a cold climate, you can't go outside and run on grass. Run on an inside track on a soft surface, that, a rubber surface that they have on indoor tracks. They have these places all over the place in cold climate areas where you can run indoors on these tracks, and they're much easier on your legs than running on concrete or running on treadmills or running on roads. Okay, so Mobster, chime in on that a little bit, and we're going to get on some strategies that can rapidly improve your cardio, rapidly.
So one of the things that Steve just mentioned, I actually agree 100% with. And when I first started jogging many, many years ago, I did 5 minutes of research, guys. It was super important. So here in the United Kingdom, there's a bunch of running shops called Run and Become. And they have these machines where you can walk on them, Steve, and run on them. And they measure where your feet, you run on the outside, you run on your toes, you run on your heel, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that you go there, you run on this machine. Doesn't have to be super fast. You do it enough times that the machine registers where the impact is multiple times, and they recommend a shoe. And sometimes it's just having an insert, an orthopedic insert added to the shoe, so that it supports you in that particular place that you run on. So there's a recommendation there. That's something you can go off and do. You can do serious. The second thing I did is I bought a running magazine, and I looked at the reviews, Steve. And at that particular time, there was a very reasonably priced shoe that High Tech produced. I made sure that when I was doing all my running, I had a pair of those shoes. I would have a pair on, and I'd have a pair in reserve. Oh, that's another quick tip and technique for you guys. And you get this especially from Steve with his middle distance, the half marathons and the full marathons. Break those shoes in. Do not run in a new pair of shoes. They're a lot better than they used to be, Steve. You can certainly walk about and weight train in a new pair of sneakers, but I would not recommend running a half marathon or a marathon in a brand spanking new pair of shoes. I would definitely recommend breaking those in, whether it's walking around the house with the laces loose, just go for a few easy strolls, get your feet used to them, and there'll be certain pressure areas, especially if you change brands or you change the model of shoe that you're using. So that's the obvious one there. But yeah, I made sure to read up on that issue of where your foot strikes the ground. For example, I use my heels quite a lot. I can see that from the shoes where they wear, and that's just for walking around. I wear a proper pair of weightlifting boots when I'm doing my super heavy squat, Steve. So they're super stable. There's a strap on, there's laces and a strap that goes across, so there's no sideways movement. And the same thing, this kind of same common sense stuff, especially if you're semi-serious or properly serious about your running, and especially if you start to get into the 10Ks, the 5Ks, the half marathons and marathons, you will want a proper pair of shoes. Like I said, I would have a pair that I was wearing, and I would have a broken in pair that had only been worn just to get comfortable, and they would be my spare. And the moment I ruined the first pair and started using the second pair, I'd go out and buy another pair if I could, the same brand, the same model, the same everything. And they were a proper running shoe, not just a sneaker, not a fashion item. I don't need to look good. I need to make sure that my feet are supported and comfortable. Now, again, marathon stuff, the longer distance stuff, good pair of socks, clean socks, changing after a run, especially if you're going to do something else. Hot and sweaty is never good. It's going to rub up against the inside of the foot, that kind of stuff. On the running machines that Steve mentioned earlier on, there is a new design of machine which has like a sort of arched or curved bed that allows for a more natural foot position. But again, Steve's right. Getting outside for me would be always the way that I would go in that regards. And cardio doesn't just have to be running, of course. You have stair climbers. There are other forms of cardio. You can literally play low intensity badminton or squash and all these things, anything that gets your heart ticking over. But we're focusing on running because that's the most obvious and it's the most common form of cardio. Let's get into the strategies like you said, Steve.
And also the tip with the shoes, around, 300 to 500 miles, around 400 miles usually, that's when you need to start replacing the shoes. You don't want to run in worn shoes or you're screwed. All right, so let's get into it. So you have high intensity.
Yeah.
So really interval training is how people train especially to really, really improve. You're going to rapidly improve your cardio quick. So what you'll see if you ever do a half marathon, you'll see during your half marathon, people they'll be keeping an eye on their heart rate. When their heart rate gets to a certain number, they will slow down. And then once their heart rate starts dropping, when it gets to a certain number, the watch will beep. And then that tells them to start going faster again. And then their heart rate will get to a certain point and the watch will beep and then they'll slow back down. So that's interval training. And that's how people train for marathons. They run a half marathon, and during the half marathon, they'll do interval training during the half marathon to train themselves for the marathon. So that's how you can train your heart. So if you just want to get, really, really improve your cardio quickly, a good strategy would be example to go to a track and you could do high intensity sprint, 1 lap, and then do 1 lap where you're slow jogging. And then the next lap, high intensity, and then slow jog, high intensity, slow jog. Do that off and on for about 8 laps. And that's a great way to strengthen your heart quickly. Now, the disadvantage of interval training is some of you may not react well to that. For me, it was overtraining, because if you overtrain, you can actually end up getting injuries and actually it can end up backfiring on you. So for me, personally, I reacted better than interval training to long, slow distance, LST training. And what that is just basically getting a watch, setting it for 55 minutes or 50 minutes or an hour, and just slow jog for that point of time. Same speed, just go find a trail, a running trail, and just jog. And I reacted incredibly well to that. And it might have to do with when I was a kid, I loved sprinting. I would do a lot of sprinting. I didn't like long distance. So maybe I was better at sprinting all along. And that was my weakness, was more the long distance. So for me, training more long distance, slow, ended up helping me. So, and in the end, a lot of you are probably going to be somewhere in the middle where you're going to want to do some interval training. You're going to want to do some long, slow distance. And then, of course, there's tempo running. In a tempo run, you would basically, let's say you run a 25-minute 5K. So with a tempo run, you'd want to run that 5K in 28 to 30 minutes. So it's slower than you would normally run at your, trying to get faster, but you're not overtraining where you're just like running a 5K at your ultimate speed. So you kind of take a few steps back there and slow it down. So that's how you're going to train. Now you can improve your cardio, not just from, actually going out there and running. You can improve your cardio other ways. Bikram yoga, hot Bikram yoga. You're not even moving. So let's say you've got a lot of, let's say you got injuries or you don't like running or something. You can go to a hot room at a yoga studio and do Bikram yoga, which is brutal 90 minutes of hell. and you'll get your heart rate really beating like crazy. And that will get you in shape in no time. I mean, if you go do Bikram yoga like 3 times a week for a month, you will, after that month, I guarantee you, you'll shave 15, 20 points off your resting heart rate. I mean, it's that intense. Also, pyro Pilates in a hot room, incredible for your, and you're just staying in the same place. So you're doing a lot of burpees, you're doing push-ups, you're doing jumping jacks, basically. So you're not even like going anywhere. You're just staying in the same spot, and you're able to improve your cardio that way. And that will shave 10, 15 points off your cardio, off your resting heart rate too. So those are some options for you. You don't have to go out there and spend all this money on shoes and go out there and run outside and all this stuff. You can literally do it just standing in your spot, just by doing some of these other strategies. It really, really works good. And look, at the end of the day, one of the myths out there you see is, oh, cardio burns muscle. Cardio is not good for muscle. It's complete bullshit. When you do cardio, you're strengthening your heart. It's going to allow you to build more muscle and build more strength over time because you have a stronger heart. And it's going to help your weight training, because when you weight train, your heart rate spikes during a set. So really, it's important, guys and gals out there, test your resting heart rate, see where it's at. Okay. 60 to 100 is what the average couch potato American should be. But you, as an athlete, you need to get that thing down under 65 or under 60 if you're going to consider yourself an athlete. So, and me and Mobster, we've had our heart rates in the 40s. We've had our heart rates even, Mobster had his under 40. So, there's really no excuse for why you should be always in top shape. And that's going to help you live a long, healthy life. Heart attacks, number one killer among women in America, heart disease. So it affects everyone, both sexes. People are dying of heart attacks at a young age. There's really no excuse for it. So make sure that you keep your heart health always you're on top of that. It's very, very important. So again, there's so much information that we have to share for you. And we're going to talk about more stuff for sure in future podcasts. So hit us up. Come on the forums. You have questions about cardio. We've got plenty of moderators who have a history with endurance. So we can definitely give you some tips and help you out with that. Steroids, Mobster, why don't you talk about steroids? We have a few minutes to talk about that. Talk about steroid use and cardio. And then we'll finish up.
Yeah. Yes, Steve. So it's it's one of those things that we like to ignore, but I was going to say it's well known because it is. And quite simply, our non-medical use of anabolic steroids and some other performance-enhancing drugs, those drugs were sometimes developed for things to do with your blood. And I've mentioned anemia in the past, but we're not using it at medical levels. We're using it at performance-enhancing level. What really happens is that you have a negative effect. And for example, both steroids and, as per myself, getting real big puts more stress on your heart. That's why I do my daily steps, as I said earlier. And quite simply, an athlete can enlarge their heart just by training, by doing heavy weights, by doing the stuff that we do in the gym. And then we're thickening our blood. We're doing stuff that can make for blood clotting issues. We're doing stuff that can make literally being real big is going to get you out of breath. And that's if you're muscular, Steve. How many times have we listened to top professional, and I mean listen, not watched, top professional bodybuilders doing podcasts, doing vlogs on YouTube. And when you listen to them, Steve, they sound breathless while they're talking. Now, there's an element sometimes of being ever so slightly excited, stimulated with the adrenaline going, but really what we're listening to here, and again, it could be things with fat burners, Steve, and diuretics and everything else. But it's all those factors. And then, oh, I saw you like this while I'm doing. And this is not while they're in the gym. I'm exaggerating for the purpose of illustrating it, but that's while they're sitting on the sofa. That's while they're in the kitchen eating one of their meal preps. They sound ever so slightly out of breath because at the very high top end of bodybuilding, or indeed most sports, Steve, it's not healthy. And what we're talking about here with cardio is heart health, the benefits. There's also an argument, Steve, and I made this in a pre-show, that if you do cardio, you stimulate, and I mentioned it also in the podcast earlier on as well, you stimulate your appetite, which means your metabolism ticks over more, and therefore you can eat. And if you're a real big professional bodybuilder, again, some of those are looking to 4, 5, 6,000 calories a day. Now they can do that because they've stimulated their metabolism, they've stimulated their appetite, they've stimulated their heart. So they're putting 6,000 calories a day without being unwell. And this is the more sensible ones. How often now, Steve, when we watch these vlogs, these videos, etc., on YouTube with top professionals, you might see, I'm thinking of Kai Green on the treadmill, but I'm not seeing the last 2-3 years. It's boring perhaps to watch, but they're not including cardio. They're not showing you what they're doing. Again, Jay Cutler in his garage, Big Ramy plodding away in James's garage, Dennis James's garage. That's about it. I can think of the last couple of years. Very little cardio seemed to be done, and yet it is a super important part. Again, weight training, weightlifting, bodybuilding has some moderate benefits on your heart, but when it's taken to the extreme, and it's taken to the world's strongest man level for strength, or the super high level for powerlifting, or the very high level of 250 plus pounds, 300 pounds muscular bodybuilders in the open class at the Olympia, it is not about heart health. And that's why these things become super important, because what's important to you at the time, being the world's strongest man, being the world's greatest bodybuilder, will go out the window 5 or 10 years down the road. And as an example, and this has been mentioned on forums recently, one of my buddies recently passed away from a heart attack at age 36, and I had at one point a few years ago, in part of his strength, got up to 180 kilograms, which is the best part of 400 pounds. At 36 years of age is not an age that we should be having heart attacks in. 400 pounds is an incredibly rare place to be, regardless of what sport you're involved in. I'm 58. My blood pressure typically is on point, very rarely to get out of control. My heart is within range. I get daily steps in. These things are super important, guys. It might not seem like that at the beginning, but it's definitely important when you finish training, when you stop being a crazy motherfucker, when all the anabolic stuff goes out the window. And trust me, it is a huge issue when you are using performance-enhancing drugs, and specifically anabolic steroids, and some level of stimulants, Steve, which you and I could talk about in another podcast, the ones that make your heart race, guys. If your heart's racing, and it's racing all the time while you're sitting there because of the stimulants, that's an issue. And that includes using crazy levels of stimulating pre-workouts. These things are not long-term good for your heart. So looking after them, doing cardio, making your heart race from exercise, and not because you're obese, not because you've allowed yourself to get out of shape, is super important. This is one of those podcasts, Steve, that we could go on for another hour on, real easy, because of how important it is. As always, please note, we are not doctors, and the opinions on these shows are ours and ours alone. It's our view, and it's based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.